Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am back from my one-game hiatus. Happy to be joined by my guy, Tyler, as always. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. I mean, the Chargers are on a bit of a win streak. They looked really good, and now, and I'm not saying the season starts this week, but it really feels like we've hit that stretch of games where we find out what the Chargers are made of, and we'll preview all that starting on Thursday. But
Yeah.
it just feels good. I'm feeling that excitement, almost like it's a mini playoffs.
Yeah, man, it really is. I mean, the next 5 weeks are really going to tell us where this team is at, right? Like, I think we have a pretty good idea based off of the rest of the AFC and the way that they have played, and we're going to talk about them like as a team today. But these next few weeks, man, like we're going to tell. And I think some people out there will look at the Bengals record and maybe think that they're not in that same class. And defensively, I agree. And we could talk about that as well. But offensively, the Bengals are one of the best teams in the league. And it's very like, 2010s Chargers-esque, where like the offense is just lining it up and then like shit happens and they're not able to like, get in the win column and things like that. So very fun matchup ahead on Sunday night. Jim Harbaugh clamoring for Chargers fans to be there. I will not be able to make it because I was just down in LA this past weekend. But you will be there on Sunday. Despite the chat trying to ban you, I understand on Sunday. It seemed like a good time for sure.
Yes, the chat definitely does not want me there. For what it's worth, I saw the Raiders win, okay? Then I tried to go through the other games that I've been to, and basically, unless those teams stink, I haven't seen a win. I saw that Lions loss. I saw the Dolphins loss. I saw the Chiefs loss. I've seen them beat Baker Mayfield and the Rams.
Yeah.
I've seen them beat Malik Willis on 1 foot, or Ryan Tannehill on 1 foot, and the Titans.
Yep.
But I haven't seen them really beat a quality opponent in a while. So we'll see. With that said, I'm not going with my dad, so that might help. I'm going with my sister, so we'll see. That might be it. And if we win, I'll have to just bring her to every game. So send in those super chats so I can get her to every game.
Yeah, your dad is obviously an awesome man, and I've met him a few times, but he's not a Chargers fan, so
No, and he's only seen his team win he's never seen his team win. He's either been with me and they've lost, or he's been with me and the Raiders lose. So he's never seen it's been a long time since he's seen a Chargers win.
Yeah. I mean, you are a season ticket holder, so you've been to a ton of games over the last 10 years.
Yeah, since 2013. So I think this is 10
11 years then.
Whatever. Yeah, if you don't count the COVID season, I guess.
That's true. So you've seen a ton of games for the Chargers. The record, and it's not like the Chargers have been awesome. So
no,
over our lives as fans, over your lifetime as a season ticket holder. So it is what it is. Brooke and I, last time we went to the Chargers game, we obviously saw them lose to the Chiefs, which, like, shocker. Everybody who's been to that game has seen them lose. But we were kind of going through it, and the two of us have seen. I think we figured it out that it was 4 wins and 4 losses together that we've been to Chargers games. So, it's just kind of the nature of the draw. Unless you're a Chiefs fan, you're probably seeing your team lose at home most weeks. So, hopefully this week, kind of continues the positive momentum of what the Chargers have going right now.
Hope so,
that being said, let's get into the positive momentum that the Chargers built. I obviously did not watch all of the game. I caught like bits and pieces of it while I was at Disneyland. Luckily, Brooke and I got tired and we decided we needed a break, so we took a ride on the train around. We did a couple laps on the train, and I had the third quarter basically up on my phone.
Nice.
So I caught I probably caught like 50% of the game on my phone at Disneyland. But watching the tape back without that kind of lens of like what happened was a new experience for me. I wasn't so much trying to catch things as much as I was trying to like see what happened. So it was a new experience. I went back and revisited some things before we started here. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. As you tweeted out, this was the Chargers' best and most efficient offensive performance of the season. Going back to week 2, they were I think 7th in EPA per play and 3rd in success rate that week against the Panthers. But it was the Panthers. Like, that's what they're supposed to do. So the Titans defense is a pretty good defense. They were top 10 in a decent amount of metrics. So the Chargers coming out of this with a great offensive performance, very efficient, had some explosive plays. it was great to see. And I think that's probably going to be the bulk of our film review today, is what this offense was able to do against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday.
Yeah, we had, and I don't know when we want to start jumping into maybe some narratives and stuff like that, but after the Browns game, we obviously celebrated the 27 points and the big win, but we were very concerned because we watched the game in its entirety and didn't look at the box score with the lack of ability to sustain drives and almost be reliant on Brown's mistakes rather than imposing your will. And we got a good amount of pushback on saying that because, well, what is it? Like, you're moving the goalposts. They got explosive plays. What else do you want? But we could tell, and statistically, it was like there too. They were not. You had to explain what success rate was. That's where we were at last week. You had to actually explain what it was, which is great because I think now going into this week, we were looking for anything better than what we saw against the Browns in terms of drive to drive to drive. I mean, they had 12 drives against the Browns, and only one of them was over 3 minutes. Now, if you find a way to score 10 times in 45 seconds, hey, I don't care. But that wasn't really the case, and it was clearly, for the most part, a coverage breakdown, and then a couple of good runs mixed in there. But it wasn't like they sustained drives. It didn't feel like football that was going to win in the postseason and get them through the AFC. It could specifically win them one game in the Super Bowl. And hey, if, I don't know, the Lions in the Super Bowl want to give up 27 points off coverage busts, hey, no problem. Like, that's fine by me. If that's how the Chargers win the Super Bowl, I won't complain.
Yeah.
But they got to get there, and they got to play 3 games to even get there. I know I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Okay, so anyway, going into this game, the 54% success rate is just like way ahead of where they've been. I mean, their success rate on the year is 38%, and it's behind the Panthers, the Raiders, the Patriots, the Bears, all these teams we kind of laugh at, like, oh, wow, they stink. The Chargers are behind them in success rate. So to see them this week, and we can talk about how they got there, but to see them jump in success rate this week was so good. They still scored 27 points, but didn't we all feel like it was a better 27 points, a sustainable, efficient 27 points?
Yeah, it really did feel that way, at least watching it on tape. Really outside of, Jeffrey Simmons almost had a strip fumble return for a touchdown, and it was hilarious watching the Jim Harbaugh mic'd up where he was so convinced that it was going up, and he after halftime he goes up to the referees and is like, "Hey man, like how big is Justin Herbert's hands that he could get that pass off?" It was just hilarious, but that was really like the only time where the Chargers felt out of rhythm. It felt like they controlled the game on offense, at least from start to finish. I thought the defense had some weaker moments, and that backs up by the numbers as well. But on offense, this is the first time where we've seen them control the clock from start to finish, do basically whatever they wanted to do. Even the Panthers game, I mean, Justin Herbert had the interception, his only interception of the season. J.K. Dobbins, I think, had a fumble that week. Like, it was not super clean against the Panthers. The Panthers are just like very, very bad on defense, so the Chargers were able to get whatever they wanted. This game, it really did feel like they came out right from the jump. The run game was clicking. The pass game was clicking. Justin Herbert only completed, the 14 passes on 18 pass attempts, but the 4 incompletions hit his receivers right in the hands. Like, it was just that kind of day for the offense. And we can kind of talk about the sustainability of it, but this was kind of what we've been waiting for with the offense, with them being able to stay on schedule, being able to control the clock, then hit the explosives down the field. And they did that in a variety of different ways. So to me, like, this is without a question the best, offensive performance that we've seen of the season, especially when you take into account the opponent here. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons, again, he had the one almost strip sack, forced fumble thing. That was like it from him the whole day. And he was the guy that we were most scared about. I mean, Tavondre Sweat, barely saw him be a factor. I mean, they don't have the best secondary in the world, but it felt like the Chargers receivers were getting open all day long. So it was so great to see. And we can talk about, like you mentioned, why, but the Chargers have such a chance to take this game and turn it into some real momentum here against this kind of stretch of games. And that doesn't mean they're going to go undefeated. Like, of course not. But if they can, have these kind of showings against the Ravens, against the Chiefs, against the Falcons, and et cetera, it's really just going to start building this team into maybe more than we thought they could be, right? They're 6-3 right now. Maybe they can go 4-1 in this stretch of tough games. And then we're talking about a very different season than the way that we've been talking about them right now. So I've been kind of struggling with like the whole ceiling aspect of this team. But if they can play offense like they did against the Titans, this conversation changes drastically for me, because we know what the defense can do.
Yeah.
We know what Justin individually can do. We've just been waiting for it to all kind of like come together. And this was the first time on Sunday that we've seen any kind of glimpse of that.
Yeah, it was the most balanced and the most like things that we can do that I've seen them do on offense and do it successfully. It felt like everything they wanted in their identity really clicked. And I don't know if it was the Saints game and that particular Justin Herbert run, which I still think is just an underrated play, that huge run. Like the way the Saints missed him, the two defenders missed him. He split the two defenders. It was like a mental like glitch error by them. Like they did not process that Herbert could move like that. And it just feels like even Greg Roman and the fans were like, oh, I didn't realize he could actually do that. And then
Jimmy Clomack was like, yeah, I've never seen him do that shit.
I mean, I think that really made everyone go, oh, okay. And so they just were able to, obviously you could see in this game, either design the run for Justin Herbert, or of course, just he scrambles and then figures it out. They were able to do so much. I was surprised, honestly, by the time to throw for offense this week. I don't know how much of that was like buying time or whatever, but it was, I think, the second highest time to throw of the season this week. But then they had so many other, so they tried to keep that identity, but they also sprinkled so many singles. And I think that's kind of where I want to start with in terms of like film, if we want to keep this going.
Yeah, go ahead.
To me, we were hoping, look, there was no Myles Garrett out there. Yes, Jeffrey Simmons is Jeffrey Simmons, but there was no Myles Garrett, and there was no Myles Garrett takeover game like he had against the Chargers 2 weeks ago. So that obviously helps. But still, Simmons was Simmons, and frankly, like it was Zion, it was Bozeman, it was Sawyer, and it was Cyril. I didn't know how that would have gone. We were certainly worried. But they found, Greg Roman, I really felt like identified that, look, that is the guy that we can't lose to this week. So what can we do? What kind of singles can we design to make things easy? And part of that was like starting the game with a rollout to Quentin Johnston, or, it got 17 yards and it was called back, but that like motion to that screen to Darius Davis, getting a toss play out of the backfield, that sort of stuff to just get away from Simmons, let your offensive line out athlete the other guys on the Titans. And then I just felt like none of these plays went for 25 yards, but there were several plays where Herbert had, and you specifically had mentioned that they needed to do this, an outlet, a check down option, a hot read. And, some of that is maybe just good, reading by Justin Herbert. But there were enough times with Will Dissly in the middle, or Dobbins in the flat, or Dobbins versus Kenneth Murray, or stuff like that. There were enough times, even the Jalen Reagor -3, he was there as a check down option. It was a great catch, and it lost 3 yards, but he was available. And what it wasn't was a sack, which we saw them against the Browns. Like it was just like drop back, 6 sacks. It felt like they had so much, like Greg Roman built in so many more easier answers, either to get away from the interior defensive line or just give Herbert that outlet. And it really helped them sustain drives. Again, success rate jumping 20% or whatever it was from last week, almost doubling in terms of the number. They did a great job this week identifying the core issue. And then I think it really just helped Herbert. It helped the offensive line. It helped everything. I think and the run game we'll talk about too. Everything just was so much easier this week. I think they did a really, really good job. Greg Roman, I wasn't a huge fan of some things last week. I think this week they found a perfect balance.
Yeah, it was a much better showing from Greg Roman and the offense overall. I wanted to see them lean into more kind of like shotgun 11 personnel, runs, and they did some of that. They obviously made the adjustment to Tucker Fisk, which we can talk about as well, over Eric Tomlinson. And it just felt like they are starting to really find what they're good at. They still run, early on in the season, you talked about like the crossing routes and how that, if we were wondering if that was here to stay, they'd run mesh a ton, and they're starting to run like variations of mesh, which was Quentin Johnston's touchdown came on a variation of a mesh concept. And so they're starting to find these things that they do really well. But then you have to tweak these things continuously as you go through the season. And so figuring out how to get Jalen Reagor some check down touches, how to get J.K. Dobbins a check down touch, how to get Will Dissly a check down touch, and make sure that it's Herbert in a good position to succeed, and it's those players in a position to succeed, because it's not just like, it's not as simple as like, okay, we're going to check this down to Austin Eckler and he's going to go get 8 yards because he's Austin Eckler. Like, you have to build them into situations where they all can be successful. And then Herbert's just going to be Herbert a couple of times and make the right decision and make some crazy throws. But he needs those options built in, because he is the best processing quarterback that I have ever studied. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm studying Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and like all these guys on a continuous basis. But, the way that Justin Herbert processes is crazy to me, because he'll go 1 to 2 to 3 to 5, the check down in 2 seconds and get the ball out. And if you don't have that check down, then that's where he holds the ball. That's where he'll scramble. Mm-hmm. That's where he'll try and force a throw. But the check down was built in this week. It was a great adjustment. I thought this was Greg Roman's best game of the season so far. And again, I think it's just a showing that I think a lot of us can feel great about, with the kind of momentum that they can build off of this kind of performance.
Yeah, no, it looks like an offense with the defense, of course, an offense that can get you through the postseason. It's not, a high flying top 5 offense, although, hey, if they keep playing like this, maybe, but you can see them getting like sustaining drives and being good in the postseason. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, we'll find out what kind of team they really are over the next 5 weeks, but I feel significantly more confident about their next 5 games than I did a week ago.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle these next few games. But the Bengals defense is not exactly great. The Bengals defense is, I think, 30th in overall success rate. The Ravens are like 27th in EPA per play. Like, the Ravens are not a great defense. So, they're going to play more difficult defenses than those two teams. But the thing there is that those offenses are crazy good right now. So the Chargers offense is going to have to keep pace in some potential shootouts. And we haven't really seen them be able to do that just quite yet. And so we all needed to have this kind of performance to give us some confidence and be able to figure out if they can hold up in these kind of moments, because so far this season, the 3 losses have all come when the offense has kind of not been able to keep up with the script, not stay on schedule. And then what happens when you're playing the Chiefs and the Steelers and you're just consistently in 3rd and long situations? Well, we saw what happened. So this offense has to stay on schedule at a higher level. And they were able to do that this Sunday.
Yeah.
I think all of this, for me, in terms of the narrative of the week, I've seen a lot of comments about like, well, the Chargers haven't played anybody. The Chargers haven't done this, etc. They're only beating bad teams. And a lot of that's coming from the fan base, which I'm like, we all have seen them lose games against teams where they should not have lost. There's a lot of infamous ones that we can talk about. I don't want to turn this into a therapy session, but we've all seen better Chargers teams, on paper at least, lose to worse teams. Chargers teams of old probably lose to the Saints against a backup quarterback, and they barely beat the one backup quarterback in 2013 to get into the playoffs, right? And we've seen this Chargers franchise get into these situations where, okay, like they have 4 games left in 2021 and they have to win 2 of them, and then they lose to the Texans, and you're like, well, shit. Now you get into week 18 in a must-win game and you lose, and that's just kind of what the team has been over the last, decade, essentially. So the way that this team plays football in general, I think just is setting the floor for what this team can be going forward. And we wanted to see that heading into the season, like really how much could this team actually accomplish in that regard? Well, they're beating the bad teams that they played by an average of 16 points, which in the NFL is a ton. Like, we have seen the Panthers, who have been one of the worst teams ever in the history of the league across the first 7 games. They just won 2 games back to back. this is still the NFL. Like, yes, the teams are not as good as the other teams, but NFL players get paid across the board, and you never know when somebody can come into your house or you go to Germany or whatever, and the other team just has a better day than you. This is not college football where you have a top 5 team playing, Louisiana Monroe on Saturday before they play, Bowling Green the next week. Like, beating teams by an average of 16 points per game is a significant accomplishment, I should say. And it's just setting the floor right now. And so people are talking about, are the Chargers real? Are they not real? They're not messing around with these bad teams. They're beating the teams that they should beat. And in the NFL, that gets you 8-9 wins a year because not every team is a great team. So I think the floor has officially been set. The Chargers on the season are plus 68 in point differential. And historically speaking, teams that have that kind of point differential have the ability to beat bad teams. They make the playoffs consistently.
Yep.
You look at what the Chiefs do to bad teams every single year, they beat them consistently. Outside of like the Raiders, who, for whatever reason, can beat them from time to time. They beat the bad teams. You look at what the Lions are doing right now. They beat all the bad teams, and then they can also beat the good teams. So we haven't seen the Chargers beat any good teams yet outside of the Broncos. I don't know how good they are, but the floor has been set. The Chargers will beat the teams that they are supposed to beat. And in this specific season, where they have a relatively easy schedule, that's 8 wins automatically. And if you can beat 2 of the 5 other good teams, then you're at 10 wins. So
Yeah.
I think it's just been, kind of brewing where this team is just kind of doing some really, really good things every single week. And they've had some things to clean up. Well, now we've seen them at their best, and they can put up 27 on a good Titans defense, and the opposing offense just has no chance. So I've loved watching them consistently out execute the bad teams because that's what good teams do, right? You have to set the floor and you have to beat the teams on your schedule that you should beat. And the Chargers right now are undefeated against the teams that they should have beaten.
We just talked about me being a season ticket holder for so long and all the losses I've seen. There's just so much variance in the Chargers records over the course of Telesco's tenure. They had the 112 win season. They've had some awful 4 or 5 win seasons. And that's very frustrating as a fan. It's frustrating as someone who's as a season ticket holder going to the stands. Jim Harbaugh saying like, yeah, go to this game, because a lot of Chargers fans haven't had that faith. They haven't believed this team is going to, go beat every team in front of them, or at least like you feel like you're going to pay money and see them beat the team they're supposed to beat or be competitive against the good teams. Hasn't really been the case the last few years. You mentioned, right, like you said, don't want to make it a therapy session, but they lost to Rex Burkhead and the Texans when they should have beaten them. They lost to the Raiders in Vegas when they definitely should have beaten them. They lost to the Raiders in Vegas again when they should have beaten them. Just so many.
You look at the 2018 season, if they beat that bad Broncos team, they're the 1 seed. And they couldn't do it that year with a great team. So, yeah, not to cut you off there, but
no, you're good.
It's been a huge issue for this Chargers team forever, basically.
Yeah.
But it seems like Jim Harbaugh is really kind of turning this thing around in that regard.
Yeah, and they'll only get better next year and hopefully the year, and they'll continue to build from this. This was the floor setting year, and right now for them to have already established that like bad team will beat you, good team will be competitive. Obviously, I'd love to see them win these games, but Steelers and Chiefs, those were close games. They just lost them, variety of reasons, but these bad teams on their schedule they're going to beat. And again, that just raises the floor. What I would have given the last 11, 10 years of being a season ticket holder to have what the Steelers have of, hey, we're gonna have a winning season every year. Like, we're not gonna have a losing season ever. If you told me, I would have paid twice as much money if you told me, hey, for a decade, you're not going to see a single losing season when you go be a season ticket holder. Holy cow. All of us would have signed up for that for sure. So for that to be the Chargers' floor right now in the floor setting season, the first season, the overhaul season is awesome. Now let's see if they can beat the good teams.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what makes the next few stretch of games so exciting. Obviously, they're going to be on prime time in 3 of the next 4 weeks. If you're not going to one of these games, I would definitely encourage you to go look into tickets because this team is just, it feels like it's got something special to it. I don't know what that is going to entail. Like just in the back of my head, like I'm not gonna like crown them obviously until I see them beat these good teams. But this has a feeling just that's so different for me as a fan watching this team. It kind of feels like 2018 where you have like this defense just coming together and you have this offense which is just kind of trying to find itself, and you led by the great quarterback. And then I remember watching that Steelers game in 2018 going, okay, like this team is really
Mhm.
starting to figure it out. And we haven't seen that moment specifically yet, but if they beat the Bengals, like this is gonna just really escalate for most of the fan base. And again, I know the Bengals are not like a great team, but it's the moment and it's the opponent,
Yeah.
it's the Joe Burrow, it's the offense being crazy, it's Jamar Chase and it's T. Higgins. And like, yes, the Bengals are not 8-2, but on paper, this is a team that the Chargers have not been able to beat in the past. And this is a team in a situation where the Chargers have kind of crumbled. And if Jim Harbaugh can get this group to rally and beat the Bengals, yes, great paper by Jacob. The
Yep.
Bengals are fighting for their lives. If the Bengals lose, their season is essentially over. This is a must win game for the Bengals. So this has been a situation where the Chargers have not lived up to the moment. And if they can do that on Sunday night against the Bengals, to me, it just is going to start to establish where the ceiling can go for the rest of the season. It just feels like something special here is kind of brewing right now for the Chargers.
Yeah, please definitely show up if you can. The way I see it sometimes is like if I show up, it encourages another two people to do it in the future. Like you got to start stacking these games as fans together, show up and get people like, hey, there was a majority this time. Wow, everyone's going. You know, it's kind of like a crowd mentality,
Yeah.
FOMO mentality, whatever. Like go to the game, start supporting. I do genuinely believe that these next few games on primetime, which is awesome, are going to be a ton of fun. And if honestly, if for nothing else, go to see SoFi at night. It's freaking magic.
Yeah, I am really hoping to be able to make it down for the Ravens game. We'll
Mm,
see, but I can't make it down this week. And maybe the Ravens game. I will say the moments that I did catch on on my phone, it sounded like the crowd on Sunday was fantastic against the Titans.
mhm.
Not the juiciest game, right? Like the
No.
Titans were never really close, but like when Puna Ford had his sack, like I could hear the crowd like really get after it. So some great moments on Sunday. It sounds like the Chargers fans were in the majority. Obviously, that I would expect that to be the case against a bad Titans team. But the Bengals, this is a great opportunity on Sunday night to really start kind of like squashing some of these notions about the fan base, and next Sunday after
Mhm.
that as well. So very exciting. All right, let's get to some of the nitty gritty details of this Chargers performance against the Tennessee Titans. We'll start with our unsung hero segment of the week. Tyler, who is your choice here after you watch the tape?
I'll go with Tucker Fisk here as an unsung hero. I think there were several good players. I really like the selection that you have here. But Tucker Fisk, they made the switch to him, and he was out there fighting like Wilson Fisk. That's a Daredevil thing if you've seen it. I'm excited for the new season, by the way. Anyway,
100%.
I don't think Eric Tomlinson was awful or like Trey McKitty awful by any means. There was
No, definitely
never,
not.
I never saw any of that. But I think there was a chance to maybe have a bit more. And I really think Tucker Fisk, along with Scott Matlock and the offensive line and Gus Edwards, really helped capture what I think the Chargers have been trying to do in the run game since week 2. And that was mostly just the J.K. Dobbins show. This was the first time we really got both of the guys
Yeah.
involved and successful and running really well. Tucker Fisk was the highest graded run blocker on the day as well. Played, I think, 20 run blocking snaps, whatever it was. It was one more than Scott Matlock played, which is fine. I just think that he was a part of no crazy, showy blocks, but just he was a part of a rushing attack that was far more successful than it had been. And I really think he was an unsung hero. I didn't realize even how much he played, but going back, he was obviously very involved.
Yeah, I was very pleased with the way that he played. It feels like he just gives them a different kind of size profile than Eric Tomlinson. I mean, he looks like he's a fullback. He doesn't look like a traditional tight end. Eric Tomlinson is not small. He is a large man as well, but Tucker Fisk is like 275 listed on the Chargers website. Like he is a large human being, and the amount of physicality that he brings to the table, I think, is fantastic. He really excels at outside zone and sealing off the edge. And I think it was a real treat to get him out there. And I think it was a big part of why the Chargers run game looked the way that it did. I felt like their best runs were all outside zone to the side where Tucker Fisk was, and I don't think that's really a coincidence. So if the Chargers can have Fisk as well as Disley, and my unsung hero of the week is Scott Matlock, the way that he's been playing the last couple of weeks, that trio they're all very highly effective run blockers right now, as long as Scott Matlock continues on this trajectory. So it just kind of stabilizes the run blocking. We got to work on the Hayden Hurst aspect of that. That was not a great showing from him. But Fisk and Scott Matlock, I think, are great choices for this segment because it just kind of stabilized the rushing attack this week in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Yeah, Scott Matlock, after that first week, everyone's like, wow, the Chargers ran so well because of Scott Matlock. Matlock got to his guy, was in the way, but sometimes the runs didn't even go in his direction specifically. It wasn't maybe because of Matlock. In this game, there are 6, 7, 8 runs that are specifically better because Matlock is an enforcer as a fullback. It looked very, very good in the run game. I could do without the Arden Key pass protection reps. Please find any other way. And I get it. You got to change it up on offense, but it doesn't look great, and nor should it. I don't expect it to look great. But Matlock, he's been steadily climbing as a blocker, and this experiment with him is starting to pay off in the run blocking department. And if he continues to look like this, like, it was good stuff. I was almost shocked to see how much of an enforcer he was and how positive almost every run was because of, or in large part because of him.
Yeah, I haven't really wrapped my arms around him quite yet as a fullback. I've been kind of waiting to see, and he's gotten better and better. And like you mentioned, the Scott Matlock where he can go forward is significantly better than the Scott Matlock who's kind of waiting for, a pass rusher or a blocker. Like they'll do some opportunities where he'll kind of do a wind back, kind of a trap concept essentially, and then he'll stop and pass protect. Don't do that. I'm sick of seeing that. But when he can lead as a traditional fullback forward in a run scheme, or he can get out on the perimeter, it's fantastic stuff. There was a rep where he's kind of an outside zone lead blocker, and Zion is reaching his guy, and it's a good block. But you see Scott Matlock, he's doing his job, and then he just kind of peaks, and the guy's starting to disengage from Zion, and he just kind of forearm shivers him and gets him to the ground. That's like awareness, IQ stuff that we have not seen from him just quite yet. One of the few inside zone runs that the Chargers executed great was him digging out Kenneth Murray in the middle of the hole, and he did a great job. And not that Kenneth Murray is obviously a great run defender by any means, but it's a legit physical big linebacker, then we haven't really seen that. So yes, the pass protection is not there, but the way that Scott Matlock is run blocking right now, I think absolutely deserves praise. It's just kind of shows the kind of player development that this coaching staff can put together when they dedicate a lot of time and resources to it. I think we're approaching like full-time fullback territory. Like I don't even know how many snaps he played on defense at this point. But he's getting better and better. And with Tucker Fisk now in tow, I think this really kind of just adds a physicality to the offense that they didn't really have when they were trying to do Eric Tomlinson and Hayden Hurst 2 tight end sets. Now they can get those 2 guys out there and really kind of set the tone. And yes, as Jacob points out, he did a too small on Sunday. Like Scott Matlock is feeling himself right now. And when I saw that on tape, I had to rewind it. I'm like, did he do it too small? He did do it too small. It was fantastic. I'm here for it. The more physicality and juice that this team can get, I think is ultimately a good thing. As Jim Harbaugh keeps saying, competitors welcome. If Scott Matlock is celebrating blocks like that, I think it's great. I think more people should celebrate blocks like that, and consider arms wrapped around Mr. Scott Matlock, the fullback now.
Very nice, very nice. So on defense, he played 2 snaps. He's played single digits most weeks. The last week it was 14 on defense. But yeah, only 2 snaps this week. I'd imagine that's generally the case as long as everybody's healthy / the edge rushers don't impact that in any way. So yeah, I think he's Sure. Arms wrapped around Matlock, the fullback.
Yeah. Anybody else you wanted to give a shout out in terms of the unsung here? I know we kind of typed a few players in the sheet, but did you have anyone else in particular?
Someone did bring up Darius Davis. I don't know if that's unsung because I think he properly saw the 50-yard returns and what he could do on offense. The 17-yarder that wasn't. I think we got most of them, but I think it was a nice performance from everyone, and I'm just excited by what Deion Henley continues to do.
Yeah, Dan Henley, that hurdle over the blocker and then chase down for a sack, which Thule should have wrapped him up, but Thule decided to like just try and destroy him, which not I do not hate at all. Thule was fantastic also today. I'm sure you guys talked about him.
Yeah,
he's really figuring it out. But Deion, Thule, the way this young defense is kind of supplementing what they have with the veterans. Cam Hart was outstanding again on Sunday, even on tape, I would say. So this young Chargers defense is really starting to grow into the role that they need them for the role. So it's been great to see those two in particular, and then Cam, obviously Tarb still has had some great moments. It's been great to see these guys kind of establish themselves as potential building blocks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Before we continue on here today, we're gonna get to our real or fake segment here, and then get to some of these super chats as well. But really quickly, I have to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. They are going to have some awesome specials for the NBA mid-season tournament that is about to start. Obviously, they have great NFL stuff. College football is wrapping up. It is the best and easiest way to get into daily fantasy sports if you are not already in that kind of conversation. I'm not super into the NBA right now, but I will partake in some Prize Pick specials here and there. I've been watching a lot of the Lakers and the Kings in particular, so it's just a way for me to kind of get extra motivated for these games that I don't really care about because I'm all into football. But obviously, you guys here are football fans first and foremost, and so the NFL, college football, that is where you will have your best days, in my opinion. And we love doing the Prize Picks segments of the week. It's been a great partnership for us, and we strongly encourage you guys to go to prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty for a deposit match up to $100 to continue to support the show and your own wallet. Like I said, prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty. All right, Tyler, let's get to real or fake. What is the real thing that you take away from watching this tape from Sunday's performance against the Titans?
I'll go with the Gus Edwards resurgence in terms of what's real. I genuinely believe that based on what we saw in only 10 attempts, I think Gus Edwards is back. It looked completely different. The first couple of runs, they looked good. Wasn't so sure. By the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th run, obviously, you could tell this was exactly the guy that they were hoping for. I still don't know what happened in the offseason. I don't really know when was there a surgery? Was there a surgery? What ankle was it? I don't know. All I know is he returned and he looked like exactly like the guy that we all wanted him to sign in the offseason. Wasn't flashy, wasn't runs of 50 plus, but it was 4 yards, 6 yards, 2 runs of over 10 yards. And a lot of that was the blocking and Matlock and Fisk, like we mentioned, and scheme and all that. But it was just straight up Gus Edwards go forward, Gus Edwards run downhill, and it worked. And to have that now loaded in your chamber with someone like J.K. Dobbins, who's more explosive, with Herbert, who can now run, it's awesome. But to me, like, yes, it was only one game, but just based on the way he looked, it looked like Gus Edwards of last year is back.
Yeah, the first 2 games were so disappointing from him because it was just like, he would get if the play was designed to get 2 yards, he would get 2. If it was designed to get 4, he would get 4. And it didn't look like it looked in Baltimore. And so you're thinking like, okay, is he injured? Is he not healthy? Is he just kind of hitting the running back wall? It was difficult to see. Well, this week he looked spry. He looked explosive. He looked decisive. And it was great to see. Again, if it's just the 10 carries a game, if it's 8 carries a game and he can consistently get you, 6, 7, 8 yards a pop instead of 2 or 3, it changes the game. And I think it was a huge part of keeping the Chargers offense on schedule. There were some vision choices that I would have, liked to see change. But at the end of the day, if he's decisive and physical and fast, I'll live with a couple of vision choices that I don't like because it adds to what the Chargers need on offense in order to stay on schedule. I think it was a huge part of it. The way that they were successful on offense, it was great to see. The Bengals this week, I think, has a chance to be a like breakout game for one of the backs. I think obviously J.K. Dobbins has been that guy before, but the Bengals are 31st in the league in success rate. And so this is an opportunity if the Chargers can stay on their script, right, for one of these backs to have a huge game. And if Gus can be that guy, again, just kind of building ways for you to beat other teams, it would be huge for this team going forward.
Yeah, this team was always going to be a bit more old school. Granted, they've let Herbert, throw it and sling it a lot more. And this look great. Like, it's not just a run it 40 times offense, but this team and Harbaugh and their identity, they know how to find the cold weather games, or not that it's cold in California, but you know what I mean? November, December, January, and say, okay, and just flip that switch to running the football. And so them finding Gus Edwards of old back now at the right time is like, they are pushing towards being ready for actual postseason football. And so I'm excited to see what they can do with Edwards.
Yeah, it's obviously the Chargers play in Southern California, right? But if they have to go to Buffalo, to Pittsburgh, to Kansas City in the playoffs, they need Gus to be fully healthy. They need him to be active like this. And it was a great thing to see. Yeah. I, a couple weeks ago, was clamoring to see some Justin Herbert design rushes. We got to work on the execution. But that, I think, is another thing that can help continue to raise the floor of this rushing attack, because if you put it out there that he can run like this, and most of his rushing attempts were scrambles, but he had 2 designed rushes on Sunday against the Titans. Both of them were very positive plays. Obviously, you had the touchdown. If you put it out there on tape that you have to account for Justin Herbert, the athlete and the ball carrier, that can occupy an edge defender and keep them essentially out of the box while J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards have free space, and the Chargers blockers are blocking the way that like they did this past Sunday. So I'm not asking Justin Herbert to be Lamar. I'm not asking him to be Josh Allen. I'm not even asking him to be Drake May or Jaden Daniels or whoever. Just give me a couple of design rushes here and there, and it just loosens up the fronts that the Chargers are going to have to see, because their teams know now that he is going to run a couple of times. And yes, it does not hurt that he can be a beast mode situation that Jim Harbaugh was adamant about. But I think it just adds another wrinkle to this offense where, again, this is an offense that comes from and has been best with Colin Kaepernick and Tyrod Taylor and Lamar Jackson. Justin's never going to be that, although it looked like he could on Sunday. But just the threat of Justin running, it helps so much with this offense, and getting the run game off the floor is huge for this team.
Yeah, I mean, in particular in the red zone, but just having Matlock, if he can block like that, and Fisk, if he can continue to block like that, and obviously the line can play well, Will Dissly can block that well, and then you have Justin Herbert as the mammoth of a human being that he is, who also just showed off all the nifty, awesome stuff. That just adds so much. And I don't know how many defenses are built to be big and play big and have the defensive backs and the linebackers, that are not just all converted safeties or tweener DB linebacker types, to have to go and face a fullback, an extra lineman, Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater and Will Dissly and Fisk, and then have to go tackle Justin Herbert, and you've got 5 yards to do it. And by the way, like, Palmer will block his ass off. McConkey obviously will block his ass off. It's going to be tough to stop them if 5 yards out from the red zone. And so hopefully they can continue with this.
Yeah, 100%. So that was kind of baked into your point as well. But I want to touch on something that I think is fake, which some people have kind of talked about the Chargers defensive showing, maybe not kind of backing up with the point total from the Tennessee Titans, in a very similar fashion of what we were talking about with like the Browns offensive performance. The Chargers defense did have their worst EPA per play showing since week 3 against the Steelers on Sunday against the Titans. They also had their worst showing from a success rate standpoint since that point in the season as well. I think a very significant part of the way the Titans were able to stay on schedule was obviously the absence of Khalil Mack. And I think specifically with JC Latham and Peter Skoronski, they were really able to kind of set the tone on that side in a way that the Chargers have not really seen so far.
Mhm.
In particular, from a run blocking standpoint, JC Latham I thought was like outstanding as a run blocker. Still some major issues in pass protection, but that's kind of like who we thought he was as a
Right.
prospect, right? And so that showed up. Him and Skoronski had some disgustingly good, combo blocks on Morgan Fox, unfortunately,
Mhm.
as well as Bud Dupree a couple of times. It really feels like the Titans found like a couple things here and there to just kind of pick at throughout the game, and then Tyjae Spears also had some great moments. They used Will Levis as a designed ball carrier.
Mhm.
So overall, I thought the Titans' plan like made a lot of sense. Obviously, they were not able to score a ton, and the Chargers were able to make plays when they needed to. So I'm not super concerned about the Chargers defense going forward in terms of like the bones of their defense. Obviously, they have some very difficult matchups, but I think this could be, at least against the run in particular, I
Mhm.
think this is kind of going to be just like the Steelers game, where it's just kind of like an aberration where it's not really indicative of who the team is. If you look at the success rate on the ground for the bulk of the season, the Chargers have kind of hovered around the 8 to 10 range. I think that's who they are, especially
Yeah.
when Khalil can play. So I'm not really buying the pessimism about the Chargers defense against the Titans. I think a lot of this had to deal with just Khalil Mack was out, and the Titans really kind of exposed that a bit with the way that they could block with JC Latham. I mean, JC Latham versus Khalil would have been a lot of fun to watch, but unfortunately we did not get to see it. So I'm not buying the pessimism about the Chargers defense after Sunday.
No, I'm definitely not. Obviously, in general the score was pretty good until the garbage time touchdown. It was 10-27. It's like they did.
Yeah.
Like if that's the worst they're going to be, like ooh, whatever. Super scared super worried about this defense. But yeah, it was definitely evident early on that Khalil Mack not being out there does make a difference, because him
Yeah.
being out there makes a difference. I mean, he's been their best defensive player. You could argue one of their 2-3 best players on the entire team, and that's just been the case since he's been here, it feels like. So
Yeah.
him not being there was certainly a bummer. They had the Spears run at the end of the half for 19 yards. That was just a garbage 19 yards. But of course, I'm like, that kills the numbers, it kills the average, stuff like that.
Right.
That scramble from Will Levis, the run from Will Levis, you could see from a mile away. They had guys playing like the B gap and then like out at the 9 or something, and just a wide open middle.
Yeah.
Will Levis was going to hold on to that and scramble for 12 yards or whatever it was, easy. So no, I'm not super concerned with the defensive performance. I'm curious, like if you filter for garbage time filter, what this EPA would have been for the Chargers overall, because the Titans didn't score another touchdown until 49 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and it meant nothing. Obviously, you'd love to see them, not give up a garbage time touchdown, but it's kind of inconsequential. So no, like you're saying, I'm not worried about this defense based on the way they played against the Titans. Will they struggle against the Bengals? Yeah, maybe, but I don't think there's nothing I'm seeing here with against the Titans where I'm like, oh, I'm really worried. Other than that touchdown to Calvin Ridley early in the game, they've given up a couple of those big plays where, not so sure communication in the secondary, but 98% of the time, the communication has been perfect for this team.
Yeah, so if you turn the garbage time filter on, the Chargers finished 17th and 19th in EPA per play and success rate. If you take garbage time filter off, it was 23rd in EPA per play and 18th in success rate. So, the gripe I've seen most is like the run defense not showing up this past week. But like you mentioned, the Tyjae Spears run for 20, the Will Levis run, that changes things. The Calvin Ridley play, like I'm not super concerned about it. That was like the first time all season we've seen like a true coverage bust. Like those are going to happen from time to time just because you have so many young cornerbacks for this team right now. We'll see what this looks like when Christian Fulton comes back. Dean Leonard could potentially come back, and not that Dean Leonard's going to play or anything like that, but the Chargers defense is so technically sound in several areas. And you can see this in like little details, like the way that the Chargers play screens, they're always all in position. And there was the great play from Bud Dupree, sniffing out the Tyjae Spears screen, I think in the third quarter. But if you go back and really watch that play, the entire Chargers defense is right there. Like Bud's there, Tuli's there, Daion's there, Derwin, they all read it like right away. And so the way that the Chargers defense plays, yeah, like they're probably going to give up a big play to Jamar Chase because it's Jamar Chase, right? But for the most part, like I trust them to be in position. I trust them to be a sound defense. We have 9 games of evidence of this at this point. You just kind of figure that they're going to be in the right play. And then like Alan mentions, Xavier Worthy had the one big play. So it's like, yes, there are going to be other times where the opposing NFL athletes who are freakazoids are probably going to do that to you. But for the most part, this Chargers defense, like they're so smart. They're so prepared. They're ready for most every single team. And we'll talk about this on Thursday. Brian Callahan used to be the Bengals offensive coordinator. He spent a long time in Cincinnati. There's a lot of overlap between the two teams on offense. I think that's a pretty significant advantage heading into Sunday night, where they have kind of a warm-up game, if you will, against the Bengals adjacent offense at minimum.
Yeah, I don't know why that didn't even cross my mind to make the connection to next week's game, but yeah, that's very, very true.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see what this looks like. Anybody trying to sell some pessimism about the defense, I don't really get like what you're looking at. They're allowing 12.6 points per game, guys. Like,
shall we Google last year?
Yeah, Google last year. They're doing things on defense that like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens was doing from a points per drive perspective and points per game perspective. It's crazy. They'll probably give up a big play to Jamar Chase. They'll probably give up a big play to Lamar Jackson. Those guys do that to everybody. It's very much like the Myles Garrett thing. Like, it just kind of happens with those guys. But as long as the Chargers are prepared for these kind of situations, like they have been, I think the defenses it's going to continue to show out well. Will they hold the Bengals and the Ravens to under 20 points? Probably not. They're great offenses, but are we going to see them allow 40? Also, probably not. Like, the defense is going to be prepared for those situations. So I'm excited to see what that looks like over the next few weeks.
Yeah, as a reminder, the Chargers gave up 246 yards and 27 points to Ryan Tannehill and the Titans last year. I'd say they're a little better this week, which is insane to me, by the way.
Just a little bit.
27 points is insane. Granted, 3 were overtime, but still, that's just, come on, man.
Yeah, this is bad. I mean, we could go through the whole list if you guys wanted to, but I don't think we have time for that. All right, Tyler, any other thoughts before we get to these super chats from what you watched on tape yesterday?
No one will like to hear it, but it was Zion Johnson's best game of the year, I think. I thought he did a very nice job. I don't think it was a perfect game. I didn't really hate the Simmons play, the almost strip sack. It was a 1,000, 2 1,000, almost 3 1,000. So I wasn't too bummed about that. He has given up a hit every single game this season, which is kind of insane, but it is what it is. But he had a very good game. It was the most splash plays. He was a focal point of the rushing attack. He had more knockdowns and pancakes and such that I can remember from any game this season. Again, it wasn't perfect, but it was very strong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people know we were. I don't want to revisit everything, but like, this was the best game of his career. I would probably say off the top of my head. He was on the PFF Team of the Week graphic, which like I don't think that's ever happened before. Not to say that PFF grades are the end all be all, obviously, but it was great to see because the Chargers need him to play well. They don't need him to be the guy that they drafted, although it would be fantastic to see, but they need him to be better. The high ankle sprain that Jim Harbaugh revealed on Pat McAfee show, I don't really know how much I buy that. He didn't look like somebody who was injured. He was on the injury report once, I believe, heading into the Denver game, but he was a full participant for 2 of those 3 practices. So he could be dealing with something. But like when Rashawn had his high ankle sprain, we could all tell.
You could tell.
Like, it was significantly different. I don't think Zion was playing like somebody who was injured. I think he was just playing poorly, unfortunately for us. But so I don't know how much I buy it. The guy has obviously struggled with inconsistencies. If he can be who he was on Sunday, which was not a perfect guard, is not like Zach Martin, is not an all-pro player, but if he can be a good starting NFL guard, it elevates this offense because right now he has not been that. Bozeman's not a good, legit NFL starting center. The right guard situation has not been fantastic. If Zion could be who he was on Sunday, it solves a large majority of their issues from the interior blocking. So he does deserve credit for having his best performance of the season.
Definitely. I think you and I both watched right guard more so adjacent than specifically, but I thought they held it down. Looked pretty good.
Yeah, I thought Jamari played well. Jamari is a good run blocker. Where he's consistently struggled is in pass protection against like the faster, quicker, defensive tackles. We didn't really see a whole lot of that. Every time Simmons was on his side, the double team went to that side. They didn't really isolate Jamari a whole lot. So it's we'll see what happens with Trey. But I do think with Jamari in there, he is a better run blocker than Trey is right now. So I'm curious to see what that looks like when Trey is healthy. They did kind of do the whole like Foster Sorrell thing in the middle of the game, which I thought was weird. Jim said after the game that he just wanted to see what Foster looked like. And I'm like, if only there were a game where you could have seen what he looked like and not Sam Mustipher. Weird. I don't remember if there was an opportunity there for him.
Yeah. We'll call it progress. We'll call it learning.
We'll call it learning. So I thought Jamari played well. All right, let's get to some of these super chats. We have 7 of them tonight, so we greatly appreciate all of you guys in here doing that. Dark Samus 100 says Tyler, drafting guard Tyler Booker would be cool. That is the guard from Alabama who right now seems to be the top guard in the NFL draft, although obviously a lot can change between now and April.
Yeah, a lot definitely can change. I'm curious who it was at this time last year. I can't even think of who it would have been. It depends on what you thought was a guard.
Yeah.
I guess if you thought like Faltano was a guard. Anyway, sure. Anybody named Tyler is fine with me.
Yeah. There's a lot of draft takes coming out now that college football season is over. If you needed more justification, it sounds like this is an awful offensive tackle class. And it's a great wide receiver class, as it always is. So for what it's worth, right out there.
Awesome.
Big super chat from Anthony Navarro. He says, let's go, Bull fam. We got to start showing up on game day and support the guys. He says that SoFi was electric on Sunday and that he can't wait for primetime Herbert over the next few weeks.
I think it's going to be one of the best atmospheres on Sunday that Chargers fans have had in a while. I think maybe even since like the 2021 Raiders primetime game where lightning struck the stadium. That was awesome. Literally like an electric feeling. I think Chargers fans are really pumped for this one.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage you guys to get there early, do the tailgate scene, the whole shebang. SoFi Stadium is just really like unlike anything else out there. So if you've never been, get there early, go to the team store, buy all the stuff you can buy because the SoFi team exclusives are fantastic. So definitely encourage you that and appreciate the big super chat from Anthony. Next one here from Montserrat Gonzalez. Can we talk about how every win has been dominant, not by 1 point or 3 like other years? Yeah, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier. This Chargers team just deserves a lot of credit for beating the teams that they should beat and doing so soundly. So it's been great to see for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I think even Anthony Lynn maybe talked about this. Like, just trying to win. Doesn't matter if you win by 1 point or 100 points. Like, as long as you win. And true, that is true. But I thought maybe this regime would be like, we're going to run it a lot. We're going to control the clock. And we'll win by a score and call it a day. This team clearly wants to impose their will. And they've tried to impose their will. But yes, dominant wins are nice. I like that feeling.
Yeah, it's much better than the other thing. Next one here from James De Leon. He says, I love you guys. We love you too. And he loves his Bolts so much. My Charger community keeps me going a lot of the time. It's the only thing he cares about in sports.
Yeah. It is nice to have a great Chargers community. A couple stories on social media this week regarding Chargers fans, and Chargers fan of the week or of the year, excuse me, was announced recently. So really, really, really great community. They do a lot for each other. So yeah, it's a special, smaller group than some other fan bases, but it's a special one.
Yeah, and the people who go to the games consistently, it's great to see. So we've obviously
Mhm.
made a lot of friends over the past couple of years. The gestures that get made each week for teams and fans, it's just it's great to see this group kind of come together every single year.
Yeah.
Chris Lewis in here, he says Quentin's development is reminding me a little of the late great Vincent Jackson. Big jump from year 1 to year 2. I think this is a great point.
Mhm.
um Quentin Johnston right now is one of the most efficient pass catchers in the league on a per target basis. He has the highest passer rating when he is targeted. His EPA per play is the highest in the league when he is targeted. So he's becoming extremely efficient, and his yards per route run has more
Mhm.
than doubled, I should say. His yak per reception has doubled. His yards per reception is increased by 4 yards. He's becoming like a pretty serviceable NFL receiver, which
Yeah.
we'll see. I think next year we can see a potential another big jump from him. But he is comfortably wide receiver 2 in this offense. He is comfortably one of Justin's top targets in this offense. Justin is going out of his way to target him, which he didn't do last year. It's been great to see a player with a lot of talent kind of start to figure things out in the NFL. What the ceiling is, I don't know if we have a firm grasp right now of that, but at minimum, Quentin has showed that he can be a reliable, serviceable NFL starter, and that's a significant improvement from last year.
Heck yeah, it is. I would not have guessed that Vincent Jackson had only 59 receiving yards his rookie season, and then only 453 the next season, and then only 623 the third season. Wasn't until 2008 where he had over 1,000 yards. That's honestly impressive. Even more impressive than what McConkey's doing, where he has over 40 yards a game every game since week 2, which is really impressive that he's just found consistency. But Quentin Johnston, when I tweeted that Quentin Johnston should be allowed to do what he does best, that's maybe the most pushback I've ever gotten. Which was really weird. I was before the season, like, well, he should just be a really good receiver. I'm like, no, let's not force him to just be the boundary X. Let's kind of, get him on these crossers. I don't think Quentin Johnston is not going out there and dominating press man coverage and winning as the X and getting 8 catches for 160 yards, every game. But in the system, with what he's being asked to do, and not very often, but like you said, on a per play basis, what he's asked on a shallow crosser, on a screen. I think it was the not the flat. I can't think of the words. They open the game with it to him. They roll out to him. Just stuff like that. It works for him, and it's clearly working well. So I just like that they're building his numbers, his confidence, his reps, and that sort of stuff. I wasn't sure. I thought his role might be reduced when DJ Chark came back. It's been the opposite. I've not seen anything from DJ Chark so far, so happy to see him continue to stack positive games.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. Last thing about Quentin Johnston, ESPN has their tracking data, which has been 2 years old at this point in time. They track how much a receiver gets open, what's their catch score, what's their yak score, and then they do an overall score, kind of a combination of the 3. So last season as a rookie, Quentin's open score was 25. It was the second lowest in the league. His yak score was 48. His catch score was 53, and his overall score was 35. Again, not great numbers. But this current season, he's got a 52 open score. Again, 57 catch score. So a little improvement, but not a huge amount. And then his yak score is a 61, and his overall score is a 55. So he's kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of the overall score. And again, that's a significant improvement from what we saw last year. And I don't think there were a whole lot of Chargers fans that were like envisioning this kind of season. So he's missed the 2 games. That's going to impact like his overall yardage total, but he's made some tremendous strides. And again, like Justin, we've talked about this so many times. Justin is so big on trust with his receivers. He's actively seeking Quentin out, which we have not seen. We did not see last year. They're designing him touches. He's executing his role. It's been a wonderful story so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, he could, it's a could, but he could have 600 yards, 9 to 10 touchdowns this season. I think if you had told me that was the case and not the other receivers didn't die in front of him, I would have said you were crazy. Like, what? As the wide receiver 3-4-ish, maybe with McConkey doing so well, I would have guessed much less. I don't know what my expectations were, but it wasn't 600 yards and 10 touchdowns and not playing an entire full season. So good for him so far. Happy to see him continue to stack games.
Yeah. In terms of snaps and targets, he is very clearly wide receiver 2 on this team. Like, it's not even really a debate. So been great to see. Next one here from Clinton. A little confused about this one, but we appreciate it. He says Steven misses one game and demoted himself from host to just another guy. We demand that Tyler get full co-host status. The Asian sensation Tyler Schoon.
Yes, technically it's the Wasian sensation. First off, I am also half white. I am my mother's son. Yes, misses one game and demoted himself. I don't know if you made a joke about yourself, like missing a game. Get full co-host status. Hey, we get paid the same. So
Yes.
You can call me co-host. You can call me water boy. Whatever my designation is here, it's all good.
Yeah. No, I hope this is a joke. I think it is, but
I think any super chat with Asian sensation, I would imagine is poking fun.
Great picture though. We don't see many like true profile pictures like that in our super chat, so we appreciate it.
Yeah,
and it's all in good fun, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I almost had to solo co-host a solo host though, and that was something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex's Wi-Fi, for that fun experience.
Yeah. Alan with the last one here says, what if they do hold him to, I assume that's less than 20 with the defense, but Alan, if you're still in the chat, feel free and clarify there. But the defense obviously can have some great performances. If they hold the Bengals defense or Bengals offense under 20 points, I think we can say salute to Jesse Minter and wish you well on your next job next year.
Yeah, if they Chiefs, I could see it. They're not exactly an efficient offense, but if they hold Bengals, Ravens on prime time to under 20 points or even 20 points, yeah, it's been real. And it's been real. Like, he might not be the first choice. That's probably Ben Johnson for most, unless you want a veteran. But even though it's only been a year, if this continues, and obviously if he holds them to under 20 or even to 220, it's a better resume than McDonald, to be completely honest. Even though McDonald did have the 2 years, look at the defense he had with the Ravens. God knows what awful war crimes Jesse Minter could do with the Ravens talent from last year. But hey, with the current talent, with these guys, like, if you tell me this guy can walk in, granted with Harbaugh, and make, Poona Ford, Deion Henley, Christian Fulton, Elijah Molden, Tyler Tart, and all these guys be like the best defense in football, who isn't signing up for that, especially with an established, I get it. We had the same debate last year, right? We want an offensive-minded head coach to be with Herbert for a very long time. So that debate will always be there, but jeez, I mean, Jesse Minter, man, has reset my understanding of what it means to be a positive play caller on defense.
Yeah. Truly the best play caller we've probably ever had as a fan on defense. It's just been amazing to see. Some people, like, I was tweeting about this, and some people are like, well, defensive coach, like, it's his first season. The NFL is not going to, approach him like that. I'm like, yes, they are. If you don't think teams are going to be lining up to interview this man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the Rams defense had the 2 best players in the sport, and teams were lining up to hire Brandon Staley. And that was 1 year, and he was in Division III football, 5 years previously. This man was the best defensive play caller in college football for 2 years straight. And you want to talk about like a comparison to Mike McDonald. Mike McDonald had Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye and had a worse defense than Jesse Minter did. So again, it's a very talented group at Michigan, obviously, but Jesse Minter was better than Mike McDonald, and he was like the second candidate last year in last year's cycle behind Ben Johnson, who obviously still is an option. And then, like you mentioned, the work he's doing with the Chargers is just kind of crazy. And then also, like, the Ravens defense is everywhere in the league. It's like a third of the teams in the league are playing Ravens style defenses right now. is very much in vogue. It's the new hot thing. He's a young coach. Like the teams are always going to be seeking out like these young, great coaches, and like he's going to be sought after. The way that he sticks with the Chargers is that he is selective. He does not go to a crappy situation. Because coaches who are in his similar situation have jumped at opportunities like the Saints, for example. And I hope that that is not the case for Jesse Minter. I hope he is selective. I hope he figures that, you only really get like one shot at being a head coach. You've got to make it the right opportunity. And obviously Ben Johnson is like the most extreme case of that. But if he jumps at the wrong opportunity, these owners are very impatient. And if it does not go well, they will can your ass in a hurry. So I hope that he is patient. He has earned the right to do that. But if there's a great situation out there and they come to him and they offer him the job, I'm not going to be mad at him, right? Because this is what these coaches do. You only get one shot to be an NFL head coach. If he didn't want to be an NFL head coach, I think he would have stayed at Michigan with Sharon Moore and just been the highest paid defensive coordinator in football and had a great gig. I think he very clearly wants to ascend to a head coach. And I think he should and has earned the right to be selective about that opportunity.
Yeah, his resume is, especially with Michigan, like you mentioned, the guys that he had just this past year, the best defensive player that was in the draft was Chris Jenkins, maybe Mike Sainer still, but these guys were not first round bona fide, like elite first round picks. Like you said, there was no Aiden Hutchinson, there was no David Ojabo in there for Jesse Minter. He made it work with the guys that he had. And these guys got drafted in, round 7 or round 6, your Jalen Harrell, your Braden McGregor. Geez, that came out of my brain from somewhere. Someone very dark and far back. But yeah, what he did there, of course, what he's doing with the Chargers, I wouldn't be surprised if someone he'll get interviews. Like no matter what, he's going to be interviewed. You can't not interview Jesse Minter this year, whoever you are, even if you have your heart set out for a Ben Johnson or I don't know, Pete Carroll or Cliff Kingsbury, these guys. But yeah, I think you want a piece of not just Minter, but Harbaugh, Ortiz. You're hoping that maybe, because he's very tied to Jim Harbaugh, you can get that same kind of, culture change, maybe the same kind of front office. Maybe because he also, worked with Baltimore. Maybe you pull some guys from Baltimore or whatever it is they end up doing. Like the entire shift for the Chargers is what they want, not just the defense. It's that Harbaugh shift. And Minter is very much like Jim Harbaugh. Minter is like, you listen to him, hate the way his defense plays sometimes, even though they've only given up like 4 points, a game. It's like, all right, dude, calm down. But we just saw Jim Harbaugh today. Alex tweeted out that video of Harbaugh getting so mad at himself because he dropped a pass.
It's so good.
Like that's Jesse Minter, man. So people are going to be lining up to get a piece of that and the Harbaugh-isms.
Yeah, 100%. Then just got a last one here. What do you think most talent? This is from Bolt Up 12. What do you think most talent evaluators missed about Tariq still coming into the draft? What did our front office see in him traits wise that most didn't? The second part, I think it really helps that Navarro Bowman was with him and helped evaluate him and coach him on a day-to-day basis. If you look at what the Chargers defensive coaching staff has done with the players that they know, like Cam Hart, Tariq Still, obviously we haven't really seen Junior Colson all that much. They've been able to hit the ground running with these players, and it's because of that relationship, obviously. The Notre Dame connection with Chris O'Leary and that group, it helps a lot to know the player. But I think for us, I didn't really see like the size and movement skills of like a true outside corner. There were some really good indicators of like a potential productive slot corner, but I have not been as wrong about a player as I have with Tariq still in quite some time, just because I didn't see him being like a viable outside cornerback. And it sounds like most teams kind of viewed him the same way as like a slot only type. And so the Chargers deserve a lot of credit for coaching him up in that regard. And he deserves a lot of credit for exceeding expectations on the outside.
I would love to now get access to all the games. Obviously, when we watch Tarheeb Still, we had like the 3 from 2023, 3 or 4 from 2022, and we kind of go off of what we go off of. So I definitely didn't see this. at the same time, and it's probably fair to point out, like, I didn't see this with Jesse Minter in general. And I think both those guys are over exceeding expectations, and one has helped the other. But Tarheeb still, I saw the way that he played the run and some of the physicality. All that felt very Michigan-esque. What did we watch when we saw Michigan and watched Michigan play? 87 different players from that defense we watched. Watched a lot of those games. And I saw some of those things, but his movement skills, I did not see that.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't cover Cornelius Johnson. He's out of the league. He's not doing anything. He was like wide receiver 10. He really couldn't cover Roman Wilson. You know, we watch Michigan, obviously, and he couldn't cover those guys like he has these guys in the NFL. Yeah. So I don't know what it came from. I don't know if it was a flip of the switch in technique, a little bit of that Minter magic, whatever it is. But I didn't see it. I didn't see these movement skills. I, again, would want to watch other games because maybe it was there, but I didn't see it in college like I do in the NFL.
Yeah, same. He deserves a ton of credit. I mentioned this. His performance against the Browns was one of the most impactful cornerback performances I've ever seen on tape. So excited to see. It was not a great week from Tarheeb this week, but again, he's playing on the outside of it. So he's vastly exceeded expectations, him and Cam Hart. All right. Appreciate the super chats from you guys tonight. A lot more than we usually get on a Tuesday show. So sincerely appreciate that. Great chat, obviously, here today. And then we were able to uncover a lot of the takeaways from the film perspective this week. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you are listening to the audio version of this, please leave us a rating or review. That does help continue to grow the show on whatever podcast platform that you are listening to. All right, we'll be back on Thursday with our preview of the Chargers and Bengals game, and then normal schedule this week. So we'll be back on Saturday, Sunday, etc. Going to be a ton of fun. Tyler is going to be at the game on Sunday, so it'll be me and one of the other Alexes probably on Sunday night. But should be a great conversation, hopefully after a Chargers big time win. All right, for Tyler and myself, this has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you guys next time. As always, bolt up.